Thank you for choosing to watch this video in which I'll be tying a game Kate variant, a variation of the famous Kate McLaren. As usual, start by mounting your hook in the vise and testing the hold. Here I'm using a fulling mill comp heavyweight in size 10. Then catch on your tying thread. This is Semperfli's classic waxed black in 12 knot. Once you've got the thread on, remove the waist end and press to form a nice neat underbody, preferably in touching turns, down to the end of the body. The tail of this fly will be natural golden pheasant crest. For a fly of this size I'll use multiple feathers. For this one I'm using 2, but depending on the feathers you might want to use 3. Take your time and align the feathers. Moisten them helps you to get this right and can help to get them to sit nicely when you tie them in. The way I moistened them might not be the best. Catch them in carefully, the pinch and loop and a few wraps of thread, and check that they're sitting right. In terms of length, you want the tail to be about the length of the body, and then catching the tail down for the full length of the body. Making sure to leave enough space for the head. Trim off the waist end of the feathers at a bit of an angle. Then tidy up the tying point, and we can finish tidying up the tying point as we catch in the rib. For this fly we're using some silver wire. This is Semperfli's wire in 0.2mm bright silver. Catching the wire on the underside of the hook and then bind it down back to the tie-in point for the tail and the underbody, making sure we've got them all nicely aligned. For this one I need to catch in the tail a bit further back to make sure I've got all the underbody covered, taking care not to move the rib or tail too much as I do this. Now we'll start to dub the body. For this fly I'm using some of Fulling Mill's Seal-X dub in black claret. It's a nice dark claret shade. It's a slight variation from the original Kate McLaren, which used a black seal's fur. And as always, I like to apply my dubbing in small doses. Helps me control the taper in the body, and it's always easier to add more dubbing as you go rather than trying to guess the right amount at the get-go. I want to try and add a slight taper, increasing the thickness of the body as I work up towards the head of the fly. I want the body to finish just a bit shy of the eye of the hook, as we've got to leave space to tie in the body hackle and the head hackle after. That should just about do for this one. So the next step is to tie in the hackle that will palmer over the body. Here I'm using a Whiting Farms hen. Genetic hen feathers work really well for this purpose. They're quite soft and give plenty of movement. So catch in the stalk and fold it back and tie it in securely with a few wraps of thread and break away the waist stalk. And catch the tip of the hackle with the hackle pliers. We'll put on a couple of turns of hackle at the head of the fly, and then begin to palmer the hackle in open turns down the body. Trying to keep the turns nice and even. Once you're happy with the hackle, catch it in with the wire rib and rib the body in nice even turns again. If you hold the wire at a consistent angle, the turns should come out quite even. But take your time and make sure you're happy with where the ribbing sits. Once the wire's at the head of the fly, catch it in with a turn of thread and lock it down. Then we can break away the hackle from the tail and then helicopter off the rib, making sure we've got it tied in securely first. Then we can look at tidying up the tie-in point, ready to catch in the head hackle. The head hackle on this fly, I'm using a Grouse shoulder hackle. It's a nice reddy brown colour and the feather will have lots of movement, and it's using this game feather gives the fly its name, the game Kate. Catching the feather by its tip with a few turns of thread, fold the tip back and secure it in. Trying to make sure that we've got any fibres pointing backwards. Then isolate the tip of the hackle and break it away. And now we'll wind on a few turns of hackle, folding the feather barbs back as we go. Now these hackles, the feather barbs get quite long quite quickly, so you don't want to go too heavy on the hackle, but typically 2 or 3 turns should be plenty for a fly of this size. Two turns should look like they're about right for this fly. You can see the hackle barbs are quite long, a bit probably slightly longer than you would normally use, but that's the effect I want to get for this fly. To avoid building bulk, I'll catch in the hackle with one turn of thread, then I'll fold back the waist end and form a neat head and bind everything down securely, making sure I'm covering up the hackle stalk. Once it's securely tied in, I'll hold the thread under tension and break away the hackle stalk. Sometimes it can be a bit temperamental, so I'll use hackle pliers. Which I'm struggling to get a good hold and break it off cleanly. So I don't think I'll be able to break off that remaining tag, so I'll snip it with the scissors to tidy it up and make sure I tidy up the head again with some thread wraps. Once I'm happy that everything's securely tied in and the head's neat enough, I'll put on my 3-turn whip finish, and that's the tying just about finished. Trim off the thread. Then I'll bring in some Velcro to pull some of the body dubbing out into the hackles and make sure I'm happy with everything's secure and sitting where I want it to. Once you're happy with that, I can varnish the head of the fly. As usual, I'm using some of Solara's Bone Dry Clear, taking care not to get any of the UV resin on the hackle, and also making sure I've got the head nicely coated. Once that's done, set the resin with the UV lamp, and that's the fly finished. Again, thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please drop it a like and consider subscribing to my channel to be kept up to date with any future videos. Any comments and feedback are always welcome, and if there are any fly patterns you'd like to see me tie, just mention them in the comments and I'll see what I can do.